Well folks, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be quick one on for a repair. The Makita sander. This is the newer big heavy duty Makita sander, the 9046. This was the replacement for the older really good 9045B. And saying things like that there, you realise how old you're getting when you call this the new sander. When it was made in 1998. Thing's 26 years old and I'm still calling it the new sander. This one was never as good as the older version. Been well used anyway, that thing's full of dust. The older ones was a far better machine. These ones here are very big and cumbersome, but they do have a very good throw on them. It's the actual circular motion the sander's putting out is a big motion, so they can actually take a lot of material off. They're a very good sander that way, but they were a very big heavy machine. Good machine at 600 watts, one of the biggest orbital sanders you're going to get, one of these half sheet sanders anyway, but a bit cumbersome. The biggest downside of them was what this one's actually in for, is the paper clamps. They just weren't as good as the older one. A spring paper clamp is always going to be better than a lever one. The older 9045, that's what that had, a wee spring lever, just a wee simple mechanism on a spring, pushed it to actually release the clamps down here. This one works on a lever, so these are still a spring action, but they're cammed. So these plastic handles, the cam and this here bar, they can all start to wear out, and whenever they wear out, they no longer clamp the paper. So that's what's wrong with this one. Or at least the customer actually said so as well. Paper clamps not holding. Not holding squat. Right, this one's actually a little bit more complicated than just the clamps. Somebody's been using this wrong. Any sander, these half sheet sanders, whenever you're fitting the paper, you want to cut it to the exact size. Obviously, if you go over, you don't have the extra room to squeeze this up inside. So if you do it wrong, it'll be sitting slack down here. So what happens is when people cut the paper too long and they realise it's too long, they'll bend it over here, fold it up and tuck it underneath this clamp, so it increases the actual tension because it's twice as thick, and it tightens it up down here so it's sitting nice and flat. So we'll do that there. Problem is, now you've got sandpaper, the actual abrasive sandpaper side, sitting and rubbing against the aluminium body. And that is what's happened here. Look. The body's actually worn away. It's got a big chamfer up here. Somebody kept folding the paper over, and this is obviously vibrating as well. So it's actually vibrated away and cut away the aluminium, worn it away so much that whenever this clamp goes on, it still remains loose, slack. It's not actually clamping against this aluminium body. Same on that side. You can see the clamps are okay, even though we rubber grommet on the end of it, the wee grip, that's still there as well. So to fix this, looks like we're going to have to replace the base. A little bit more costly, but still worth doing for the likes of this thing. Looks like we'll be killing two birds with one stone by replacing this as well. Another problem, these big heavy ones, they're a heavy sander for doing heavy work. Generally, they do get used very heavily. Maybe push down onto the work surface, so eventually this here base actually develops a bow as well. These boys will be sitting leaning on it, driving it down on, try and cut onto corners and that. Eventually the aluminium fatigues. So we'll be actually replacing this, we'll actually be fixing that as well, giving them a nice flat base to work on too. First off, get off the old base. 8 screws hold this down. that off. This is just an aluminium plate with foam stuck to the top of it, and then Velcro glued to the top of that as well. Nobody ever really uses the Velcro on these things. You can actually buy half sheets of sandpaper with Velcro backed, just for quick changing them, but nobody ever buys it. Works out too expensive. Everybody generally just uses actual clamps instead. So get that off. Then you've got your aluminium base. You can leave these on for now. It's easier to take them off later. Under that, you have this your metal plate for covering your bearing. And it's sealed up. That's your washer, just to stop dust getting under here. This counterbalances the actual weight as it's been thrown back and forth, so you get less vibrations but you still get the movement. So that is just sitting attached to the shaft. To get the base off, we have to get this off. You can't just take it off on an Allen key. Get a screwdriver or something and wedge it against the body here and just jam up the counterweight. Then you can just take off the Allen key, or you can just use likes of an impactor. Makes it a little bit easier. Counterweight comes out. And this base should just pop off. There we go. Inside, you've just got a big wasted space. The actual gear drive from the armature down here. A big gap between that and your base. There's just a rubber cover for keeping the dust out of on here. It obviously doesn't keep it all out. So we'll give that a good blow out with a compressor, get rid of the dust. This is the part we need to replace. The bearings should be okay. Feel alright anyway. Just quickly clean this down a wee bit, just so we can get the head of the screws out without stripping them out. Really get them out. Support the housing and press them out. You can tap them out, but there's two bearings on this, and if you're hitting this inside race with a steel insert and a hammer, you're going to eventually damage them. So one side, it's not just two bearings, also a steel plate and a little packer as well. Just a gap between the bearings, just don't forget about them. On the bottom of the housing, you have a little shim too. Now these, I don't know if these were changed before. No brand, no markings. Just like a good quality seal on it, mind you. Two ridges on it. No brand markings. No bearing number, not what you'd expect from Makita. There we go. Wouldn't expect anything less. SKF bearing, and it's a 6002. You Makita wouldn't let me down. So if you want to replace them, that's what you need to put on. 6002 bearings, two of them. But these ones, they're actually perfect. Not a thing wrong with them. So they're still fine to use. Just reuse them instead of replacing them. The base, what we need for that is a whole new base. And sadly these ain't cheap. €49 plus the VAT just for the base. And that's the part number there if you ever actually need to replace one. It's just an aluminium base. So that's the main bit we need. Before we change this over, I'm just going to clean this down and clean out this motor. That's a little bit better. Now, these are the main things. Changing over these parts. This couldn't be easier, especially with the base off. One screw on top and side. That's just your screw with a washer on it. There's 2 pins on it. Generally, whenever these wear out, they'll break one of these pins, or they'll wear away the plastic housing on it. So you'll know whenever that's gone. And there's a wee metal sleeve over the top of that. Underneath it, that's just this here plate. That is a little bit worn. Might just compare that to a new one. See if we'll bother replacing them. So the wee plastic levers is probably the first thing to go. Actual metal pins in the middle of them, they're not part of it. You have to buy them separate, but the pins never break. It's always the plastic lever, because it's just made of plastic. Not expensive, $3.50 for each of them. That's the part number if you ever need to order one. Wee rubbers on the end. These wee pieces here, if they wear out, you can just replace them on their own. They cost $2.50 each. That's the part number there, if you ever need to order those. Actual metal plate itself, that's actually the wrong one. That's off the smaller sander, the BO4900. Another decent sander, just the next one down from us. Same type of plate, but it's a different shape. That's no good. This is the right one. These are a little bit more expensive, $22.60. That's the number there if you ever need to order it. That's 152457-2. The old part's been lying in stock a while. The only one thing I want this for is just to compare it. See if this needs to be replaced. To be honest, not really. It's just the very edges here worn. But the rest of it's still intact. They have 3 wee teeth on them. And the 3 are still on this one. Sometimes it can be hard to tell how much is worn away because you only get these on every once in a while. Comparing it to a new one, it's barely worn away at all. It's basically just taking away a little bit of the teeth here, and that's it. It's not the metal clamping it, it's a little bit of the tooth grabbing the paper, but it's the rubber underneath that's doing most of the holding. So that'll be fine. The rubber itself might be a different story. This one's still nice and square. This has a chamfer to it, so that might need to be replaced. The only thing about replacing the rubber on it is, unlike this other one for the 4900, you can't buy the rubber for this here. So that there actually comes with the plate. So you have to spend €22 to replace the rubber on it, going by the Makita breakdown, but you don't have to. Just order this number here. This is actually the one for the smaller sander, but with the same rubber pad. So if these wear out on you, don't spend 40 quid replacing these. Just spend a fiver and buy 2 of these things. That's the number there. Nice and cheap. Exact same size. The holes are in the exact same location. So pull this out. See how much that one's worn. And just push this one on. The new original ones will have flat pins here because they're squashed over. These replacement ones will have a wee bit sticking out. That's to make it easier to fit. Just line them up in the holes, put them all on, then just pull that rubber. That'll pop it under the hole. You don't have to try and squeeze it through from this side. Let's get a good grip. It's not easy to do. And just pull it through. Simple as that. So that wee thing cost $2.50 instead of $22.50 to fit them. This is literally just sliding on. So open it, drop that in. You can drop in your packer and then your screw. Now, much tighter fit. It pulls it on nice and tight. That's why it has this wee shape profile up here. So it actually gives it extra spring. It pulls back in here to give us more of a spring to it, even tighter hold. Just do the same with the other one. This one's got a wee bit more wear to it. The 3 wee pins are gone, 3 wee teeth. It has got a lot more wear. But it is just the 3 wee pins gone. It's not worn enough to justify spending €22 on it. This was actually glued back on before, look. Some holes are going to be covered now. Clean them out. Put a new rubber pad on. And that should be fine. It'll be a lot better than what it was before anyway. Especially with a new base too. That's all we need of this. You can actually see how much of a bend was on that. Get rid of that. Refit this. The screw holes for this won't be threaded. It's actually a machine thread. It's a tri-lobed end, so this is a self-tapping screw. It'll tap its own thread as it drives in. So it'll be a very tight fit. Generally it's better using an impactor or something like that, so you don't strip out the head of the screw. So it'll actually cut its own thread as it goes in, saving them from actually threading it. But also, whenever you fit this, when you cut your own thread with the screw, it's actually giving a tighter fit, so there'll be less chance of this actually coming out. If it was a machine thread, if this was pre-threaded, putting a screw into it then could come loose as this is vibrating. So actually cutting your own thread with the machine screw is actually a better setup. I don't think they do that for that reason. It's cheaper for them not to thread it, but it works out better for you that it doesn't actually come out again. So that's that one. A nice tight fit as well. Now, next thing we need to do is refit the bearings. That steel shim in. Plates in the middle. This wee steel ring in between. I need to press these back into this aluminium housing. Sometimes it's hard to get them squared up to begin with. Put them on one at a time. one, steel plate, steel ring in between, and the next bearing on top. That's it. There's the countersunk head screws, and again they'll cut their own threads going on. So they might be a little bit tight. And that's it. Ready to go. This is a simple matter. Putting the two back together. So it's just going straight through the centre of the bearing. These wee metal feet on the rubber bellows just slide into the housing here. It doesn't matter which way you put it on. There's no right and left. Counter with them. Screw holes up here. Then there's a pin goes into this hole. It has to go in the right way. Just tighten that up. Your rubber O-ring to seal this. And a plate over the top to seal up that counterweight. Now this is a little bit worn. It's a little bit melted here. And the corners are all squashed down a little bit. Still functions, but it's obviously just worn. But that is one of the main reasons I don't like this particular one. This aluminium base costs €50 plus the VAT. This piece of foam on an aluminium plate and a bit of velcro, that costs €80 for that there. €80 just for the foam base. It's always been an absolute rip-off. Whenever that goes, you're onto big money just to change this. That's why I never really like these all that much. Great machine, but awkward to use, and that main part, the main bit that's going to wear out and need to be replaced, is extortionate money. In other words, it doesn't matter if there's a little bit of damage here or there. Nobody is going to be wanting to pay to replace this base unless it is absolutely destroyed. And you couldn't blame them on to cost that kind of money. Again, these have to cut their own thread again. Outside four are actually screwing on the aluminium plate, so they have to be tapped, and the four inside ones are screwing on to the metal insert, and these here are rubber bellows, so they're already threaded. But that's her, folks. One Makita 9046 half sheet sander made in 1998 with a new aluminium base. Dear enough fix, having to replace the aluminium base at €50, but if you have to replace that there at 80, you're into a hell of a lot more money. So this one is going to stay, just this aluminium plate's changed. At least it gives them a nice flat sander now to actually work with, instead of the old curved one. That's her. That should now have no problem at all clamping the paper nice and tight. Nice tight hold. Just when you're putting it on, make sure you don't fold it. Paper side down, only the sandpaper sitting forward. That's her. Now I would also like to change the cable on this thing. This is only old blue Arctic. It's fairly rough and stuffed cable, but there's nothing actually wrong with it. It's not damaged or anything, so I have to just leave that. Can't change it for no reason. That's her. Up and running again. One thing I will do is just clean out this dust bag before I give it back to him. Of course, the zip doesn't work in it. It's all jammed. He blew the compressor as well. Even freed up the zip. That'll make it a lot handier for him. That's it. Ready for work. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed. That's wee Makita 9046 repair. So you can hold the paper again now with a new aluminium base.